Welcome to Definitely Maybe Agile, the podcast where Peter Maddison and David Sharrock discuss the complexities of adopting new ways of working at scale. Hello, and we're here again, and it's always fun to start off these calls. It feels like it's been forever, but we are joined today by AJ, and my good friend Dave is here. And my new friend AJ, obviously.
Hello.
So, AJ, why don't you go about introducing yourself to our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I am very excited to be here. The whole podcast are topics that really interest me. So my name is AJ Bubb. I am the founder of MxP Studio. We are a human plus AI startup studio. What that means is we really focus on how to leverage AI as a tool to augment human capabilities, not replace. So, working with organizations, founding teams, startups, enterprises to really embrace what the next wave of technology is bringing in terms of our ability to get to the market faster, achieve product market fit, and ultimately delight the customer. And I say that laughing because in my previous life, I was at Amazon, and this is an Amazon term, and I don't like everything Amazon does, but some things they do. Customer centricity is one of the things I like. 20-year technology veteran. I've been everything from hands-on coder, technical co-founder, to consultant, practice leader, all in emerging technologies. And now I'm launching my own products and helping others.
Can I ask you we hear so much around AI and how it impacts the work that humans are doing, right? That we are doing. And you very clearly chose with MxP Studios to choose this interaction between human and AI. You expressly describe it as not replacing people. So what questions do you ask? What are you looking for when you're trying to find the right organization to work with? What's that look like?
Yeah, the biggest thing I'm trying to understand, one, what are the problems that they're solving for their customer? So what is it that they're trying to accomplish? The second thing is, what are the things that are holding them back, right? A lot of the time, you find right off the bat that there's ambiguity on both sides of that question, right? Which is not an AI problem at all.
Yeah.
And that brings into a little bit of something I've seen with emerging technologies for over and over and over and over, right? Emerging technologies are being brought in as the silver bullet solution to the problem that organizations don't realize that they even have. Or let me rephrase that, to the problem the organization thinks they have, but it's usually not that problem, right?
It's
So
sprinkling AI over the top of everything and hoping everything magically gets better as a consequence.
exactly. Before it was data lakes, and data lakes didn't solve it. So it was data oceans,
Swaps.
and it was IoT platforms and AR and VR, and chatbots were going to do it. And, fundamentally, it comes down to, is your organization going through the digital transformation journey and doing the foundational stuff? Technology, culture, training. Are they ready to adopt the technology? So the questions that I begin asking is just really, what are you trying to do? Where do you think that you're stuck? And then let's start to figure out, does technology play a role in that? And if so, what role does it play?
How do you find with the customers you're talking to that they do they feel challenged at all when you come at them and say, well, actually, you're doing it all wrong. You can if you start to look at your processes, you shouldn't be thinking about this as something that you're just going to augment this service over here. You need to be thinking more holistically about how does your customer get value from the products that you deliver? How does that exchange of value occur? And what can you use this technology to help maybe puts a bit of weight on one end of that scale to help you deliver more value to your customers and ultimately improve your business?
Great question. The first thing, I never say they're doing things wrong, right? They obviously did something right because they're in existence. So it's always a yes and. I took improv for years, so I'm always a yes and. Yes, and let's dive in deeper to figure out, is this the right workflow? Is it the right procedures? Do you understand your customers' pain points? right? And then we try to add on to that. That's something that, I learned by making the mistakes, right? As an engineer, we're very opinionated and we tend to go into a meeting with our point of view and we'll say, that's dumb. And I did that a couple times in the wrong place, and the C-suite put me in the corner and said, this guy can't talk until we trust him again. And I learned the lesson the hard way, right? They're operating. So you have to start finding the balance of what I think the way forward could look like, and what is it that they're doing that has legs already. And then how do we meet in the middle, right? Because your job as an expert is to win hearts and minds so that they can follow along your lead. And you don't do that by saying, you're wrong. This is awful.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully that answers the first part of your question.
I was being a little antagonistic. I'm kind of hoping you don't go in and tell people they're wrong.
But you know what? You'd be surprised. I've, like I said, I've made that mistake. I've worked with other people that make mistake. When you have this level of experience and expertise, it's easy to let that get ahead of yourself.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I've commonly seen that with especially SMEs who are experts in a particular field, say DevOps, for example, and coming in and presenting externally and going, well, you're doing it all wrong. It's like, you should be doing this 10 times a day. Let's go. And the organization's like, well, we can deploy once a year. It's just, 10 times a day. Are you kidding me? Get out of here. It's like they can't, because if you're overreaching, if you're painting a picture that they cannot even possibly conceive, that's never going to work for them.
Exactly. And we just lost all the DevOps engineers from this episode. Like, these guys, look at us. But this is a good example, because the DevOps engineer is this idea of release 10 times a day. The organization comes back and says, we could do once a year. I think the appropriate response is, why? Tell me more. What's leading to that? Right. And this gets into the AI piece in a couple ways. Oh man. Okay. We could go off on a lot of things. The AI piece in a couple ways. So AI is the ultimate gaslighter, right? It's going to say, oh, I'm the subject matter expert, and come back and say, this is the prescriptive way of doing it, which is interesting because it's trained on so much real human knowledge in the responses online that tend to come from subject matter experts who are very prescriptive in the way that they answer, right? So of course it's mimicking human behavior of, this is my way and the highway, and this is what you do it. And it can sound very convincing. So I think this is like one interesting topic where AI begins to fit into it is that subject matter expert with zero context unless you give it to it. And then the other pathway is, what we're talking about, that organization that can only deploy once a year, right? Those exist, or once a quarter.
They still do. There are fewer of them, hopefully. I think DevOps has done a very good job. But
I have a huge judgmental perception when I see an app on my iPhone and the release note says brand new icon, because I've been in those meetings when it takes 6 months to decide on a new icon. And, for me, that just means the organization has lost its innovative agility and is in maintenance mode, and, somebody's just trying to do something. But those organizations exist. And this is where AI plays an interesting role, because you go to the organization and they'll say, we need to code faster. And we're going to give all of our engineers AI. They're going to be 10x engineers. But you go to the engineer and say, what's holding you back? And it's not that they can't code fast enough. It's that they can't get the approvals. They can't get the access. They're in meetings all day. So what did you really solve for? You gave engineers the ability to pump out more code that you can't handle. This is a structural problem. AI is not going to solve your structural problem.
I think there's something really interesting in what you're describing, that the first thing that we do when the conversation is, how are we going to use AI to make the business quicker, better, whatever it is ignore the request for the tooling and the technology and start understanding how the business. And that's one of those things that Peter and I have talked about this a lot, where the the problem in front of you isn't the problem. The problem in front of you is what
Mm-hmm.
people think it is. It's the invitation that gets you into a conversation, but it's really understanding that there is a system there, there's a process, and that the real benefits come from understanding where things can be improved because they need to be improved, not because we all have a cupboard somewhere in the place that we live that is
Yeah.
not a nice, neat cupboard, because it's just not one we need to worry about. Eventually we'll get to it, maybe, but we don't need to. And we want to fix the things that need fixing because they give us something special, rather than fix what might, feels like it needs.
It's also validating when you fix something that is scoped and tiny and you can see that, yep, we made a difference here. And then, at some point you're going to be doing the little things that move things forward quickly. But the question is, what does that roll up to? And what you're describing is the idea of the durable challenge, right? You have a tool, you have a problem, you have a symptom, but what is the overarching challenge? Is it you need to deliver faster? Why? Is it because you have to keep up in the market? Why? Is it because your competitors are funded or you don't have a brand established? Like, as you move up we could call it the problem stack to get closer to the customer, you start to realize, oh, this is actually what we're solving for, right? Amazon solves for people wanting to order things online and have it shipped directly to them. That's a little too specific. Amazon solves the need of, as humans, we need things to survive, right? And when you figure out that challenge, then the number of solutions are limitless. Drones, I don't know, we could have horse and buggies again and deliver it locally. There's so many ways to solve the challenge, and you get the freedom to solve it. So you have, back to the question, where do I start, or what do I start asking organizations? I ask why a lot. Oh, we need to deliver faster. Why? Oh, we need to do this because of this, because of this, because our investors want to see it. Like, let's figure out what the driving motivation is there and then work backwards from there, because depending on what that is going to depend. I love the one, our investors want to see it or we have to show the market. Innovation theater. And a lot of people, myself included, used to look down on that. Oh, it's pointless. No, it isn't. It's a marketing effort, right? You just have to show the market that you are thinking as an inventor. Okay, but that's a different motion, right? You're not looking at revenue from the products or services you're developing. You're looking for market penetration. You're looking for stock price. The funding comes out of your go-to-market funding. Like, if you don't realize that, you're going to treat it as actual product, and then it's going to fail.
Well, signaling is important, right? That signaling piece, which is a lot of that sort of theatrical side, sometimes feels like, and we've all seen it internally. There's corporate signaling, which generally is not a great move. That's a different piece. But when you're describing, if you're looking for an outward signaling around, what your culture is like, where you're trying to get to, what you're trying to build, that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I come back to we touched on a little bit in your history, but around development and what might be happening. And we briefly mentioned that idea that we often see, and I kind of think of it, it comes down from somebody upstairs that says, yes, we can use this to develop quick.
Mm-hmm.
And most development teams don't need faster coding. What do they need? If you get questions coming in from the build side of the equation, and AI is a part of that topic, as I said, they're probably not asking you, I just need, code created more quickly. What are the problems they're trying to solve from the build side?
Yeah, when I think about it, they're looking for direction, right? Builders will build in the direction that you point them on. And I think it already was a necessary skill when you're developing a product. Now, I think it's even more so because engineers can go faster. So if you think about velocity, I love this example because so many teams measure progress by their velocity. And then when you say, what is your velocity, is how many story points we closed, right? Close. Okay, so language is important. How many story points we marked as done? What's your process of considering it done? Did it go through QA? Oh, of course. Did it go through customer research and validation? What's that? Right? Oh, how is it done? So they're just measuring velocity by the amount of work closed. And if you look at what is velocity, velocity is literally speed and direction. So now your speed has 10 100x, but your direction, which already in a lot of teams was mediocre, is even more important because before you know it, it could be just completely built in the wrong direction. And people will say, oh, what's the point of this? And now you're just stacking up all of this technical debt, feature debt, just it's all sitting there. And you end up with these huge monoliths that make no sense.
I was just going to
because the
say,
builders will continue to build.
Yeah,
well, this is
builders
it.
will build.
They're accelerating the development in justification to try. This is when you get that sort of feature explosion of, if I just put something extra into it, maybe the value will suddenly pop up instead of backing off and recognize. I mean, it's really, really difficult in most organizations to pull back from a direction that they're going in, which of course means that choosing that right direction and making sure in the early steps that it is the right direction is so valid and so valid. And what's interesting is that's not an AI thing, right? Sorry to speak about it, but it's not an AI thing. It's a people thing and a customer understanding thing.
Exactly. This was already a challenge before. Leaders are in a position where they're making strategic bets and they need data to make that bet. Some do it better. Some go on a gut feeling. Some get lucky. Your conversation about product versus project, right? The product owner, the product manager's job is to live in that problem with the customer to supply data back to leadership to say, this is the direction we're going, and here's why we're going with that. But now I think a lot of us are feeling that things are stuck. Leaders aren't making decisions, and not a lot of chatter is about, well, why is that? It's because things are moving so fast, we can't even collect data fast enough. And that's the problem is like, if we're focused too much on how do we use AI to move faster, you're missing the problem, which is what do our customers even want and need?
This piece where we were just moving the constraint in the system. I mean, classic TOC stuff, but theory of constraints. But we see this as the developers get faster, and I've done some recent work around this too with the organization. We look at it and say, okay, what's it take to get an idea in front of a customer? And if there's like 50 steps that it takes them to get it there, and which of these are you actually concretely using AI on every day? Well, about 3 of them. Okay, so the other 47, right? All of these other things that have to happen, what about them? Because if a lot of those are still done manually, we've still got to go back and look at how do we improve those. And the reality is that it obviously gets a bit fuzzy around the edges here. The AI is involved in different ways into some of those. Like when we're refining what the plan is going to be, somebody's going to put that into a chat agent and they're going to ask questions and they're going to refine what that is. And hopefully that results in a better definition to be fed into the system. But sometimes.
Yeah. It becomes the AI all the way down. We take the requirements and specs, we feed it back into AI. You know, I feel like AI is great for helping double check our thinking and find the corners that we need to think around or look around, right? But I just put out an article around synthetic user testing where you can just go and hire agents that have customer personas to give you feedback. And I roll my eyes at that and I'm like, guys, what are we doing? Like, okay, you could test your research methodology there, but you're really not going to talk to your own customers. What is happening? Brave new world.
Yes. Yeah, fun, isn't it?
It kind of brings back to the 50 steps that Peter's mentioning. If you don't close the loop, it doesn't matter whether you've got 50 steps, 3 steps, whatever it is. The goal is not faster delivery of something. The goal is delivery of the right thing. and to your,
Hmm.
delivering the right thing for a synthetic audience versus delivering the right thing for your available audience that you're seeing and bumping into today, not even your ideal one in the future, but the ones you need to get to the next step. That's the bit that matters. And there's a lot of product people who understand the principle of getting to the end of that line of stuff to do, but the loop back, there's so many barriers to actually getting that, whether it's just corporate kind of structure and incentives and measurement and what's being measured and what's not, whether it's how do you even get feedback. Maybe you build a product that sits in the market for 2 years before you get any feedback. So
yeah, and in a large or heterogeneous organization with a ton of stuff going on, you often run into problems where that post-release piece is difficult. It's hard to get consistency, not let alone in the, hey, X number of months down the road, we may see a signal as to whether or not this was actually an effective thing to do or not, but it's going to be drowned out by all of the other things that we've done in the meantime. There's the, can we actually tell that it's working at the moment we deploy it? Even the post-smoke test validation that this is the thing that it was supposed to do, because for some things that can be difficult to do. So we've got lots of different pieces where we need to get better at. To your point, AJ, we've gone through the development cycle. We've got to the point that this thing's ready to release. We said, yes, it's done. And now we're going to wipe our hands of it and on to the next thing, except we can now do that so fast that there's all of this stuff churning out the end. How do we know what the impact of all of this was? Do we have any way of tying that into the future? Or of coming back and circling back and saying, what are we doing? Where are we going? Are we looking at the feedback? What are our feedback loops for that?
Yeah, and I'd love to hear what you've seen in your experience as well. That learning sprint, the research, that's something that needs to come in at the very beginning of the planning of what happens when this is successful. Do you see teams asking that? Plan for success. What's our plan for success?
Oh, I think this is an interesting one because, first of all, I think we tend to go into organizations that have a problem, not necessarily ones that are sinking, right? That's the nature of it, coming in from that. And at the same time, it's most organizations, the behaviors that we're seeing are common. They're not, it's not really like that there's one or two things that are going that are unusual. We see very similar behaviors. And one of them being is that no, they're not. They've got no awareness of how early to start asking questions. There's a feeling that that's somebody else who's coming up with the request.
Yep.
Right. And by the time you get to the end, that's at the beginning of the process. By the time that you get to the end, there's another feature knocking on the door. There's another request. So how quickly, we've all been in that situation where we'd like to be able to see this through to the end, but we've already got to go back to the next piece. So there's often sort of an interpretation of the outcomes in a positive light. This is good enough. We'll call that a win, rather than drilling in and going, is this what we actually expected to see? So an uptick that's too small or that's way bigger than we expected tells us that what the model that we're using to understand how our customers are behaving is the wrong model. There's something broken about it. But we don't consider that as long as there's an uptick. We can consider that as the win in many cases.
Oh,
Peter, would you add anything to that?
I agree. I think organizations are very, very bad at figuring out what that is and how to measure it. Certainly upfront, what is. I think there's another element that falls into that, which I would just label the politics of it and the time scale that's involved with whatever it is that's being done. That can often influence it. It's how much does the person up front actually care about being there at the end? And do we have mechanisms and systems built into the organization to even do that? That's often the part that can be missing as well. There's might be a PIR type process, but it doesn't really capture after the event, did we get the outcome we were expecting to from what it is we did? And there's a timescale element of that.
Yeah. Yeah, Dave, I like what you said where the uptick, as long as there's an uptick, if it's bigger than expected, we don't ask why. If it's smaller than expected, We don't ask why as long as there's an uptick. We'll probably ask a little bit more why if it's smaller. But yeah, that's a great question. Why was this successful? If it blew past our expectations, we need to figure out
Yeah.
what did we miss in the market, right?
Mhm.
Otherwise you're just hoping on faith and you're spray and pray. Just keep releasing as much as possible, hoping
Yeah.
something hits.
That is a strategy. We've got AI now. We can have all these agents, and they
Well,
can go out and buy the product.
see,
But
that worries me. That's where AI slop is coming in,
yeah.
right? We can release so fast that it's the same thing. If you remember, I was watching a documentary back in the 90s when they were doing these video game competitions where it's you have to make a full video game within like the size of a floppy disk, 1.4 meg. And then, people are building these full games in 700K of disk space and it runs in memory. And it's like the hyper optimization of things. And then compute got cheaper. We all have computers now. We have, gigs and gigs of RAM. So what do we do? Don't worry about it
Yeah.
anymore. So now with AI, oh, don't worry about it. Just ship it,
Yeah.
ship it, get it out there because it's so cheap to ship it. And now people are complaining, oh, we got all this AI slop everywhere. It's like, yeah, of course, because
Yeah.
it's too expensive to know what you want. So we're just going to give you everything.
But that and it's a peculiar one because it skews the market immediately. I mean, what I'm finding, choose any favorite social media platform which is currently inundated with so much artificial, content generated off through algorithms and agents. And it doesn't, it means that market changes. It means people move away from it, they change, they filter
Mm-hmm.
differently. So it isn't an optimization of a stable market. It's the breakup of that existing market and the generation of something different. I mean, I see this
Mm-hmm.
in everything from, handwritten notes instead of digital messages going out, things like that. I mean, every number of different ways. There's so many different ways that we adapt the way we consume product, is whatever it might be. Because
Yeah. And I wonder if there's a couple different ways that this can go, especially when we think about information that's being put out there to sway your opinions and manipulate you or just make you feel a certain way and is proliferating so fast. And I wonder one of the paths that we may end up on, it reminds me of is it Endgame? It was the one before Endgame. No, it was Endgame, where he's going through and figuring out, okay, uh, one chance in a trillion that we could survive, right? So one of these paths is that people just mute everything out and they say, yep, okay, this is AI. And the only thing I'm going to think of is when I talk to Dave and I talk to Peter, and because I know you. And that's a shift from information economy to a content economy, right? Information, we used to be the person who held the information had value. Real estate, I have the listings, I have value, I'll sell it to you, right? Uh, you've worked with Fortune 100 companies, you've seen what's inside, you have value, you're the subject matter expert. Now that information is out there everywhere. You can go and chat GPT. What is it like to work in a place and what's their problems? Got it. Right. So now we've switched to a content model, which is all about trust. Who is AJ to be talking to me about Agile? I don't know who AJ is. Let me look him up. Right. So the value shifted. And this is, I have my podcast too. And I didn't realize that I was going down this road, but now I'm seeing it is that your audience is your leverage, right? Your audience, the number of people who trust you is what's going to help other people trust you. And without it, we
well,
don't know.
it's and a relationship piece in there as well. I think there's credibility and experience and the trust. The content is thoughtful. I certainly see when I find pieces of content that are clearly time has gone into creating it. There's thought depth in terms of the the thesis and how it's being pulled together and
Mm-hmm.
how they reach conclusions. Then you suddenly slow down and take time to build to go through that. And then there's also the relationship side. One of the things that we're certainly seeing is the communities which are building out, because all of a sudden we've been online, we've been doing lots of different things, but now we're wanting to reconnect, to go, there's people behind this as a response to, where did this come from? Who knows what sort of, is it an algorithm?
Yeah, I realized that on Reddit, I don't consider anyone human. Not as in they're subhuman people. I think they're all bots, right?
Yeah.
And then it just so happened I saw a post in one of the vibe coding subreddits, and I don't know why I looked it up and looked at what they built, and I reached out. I said, "Hey, we need to talk because I feel like what I'm building and what you're building, there's some synergy here." And we got on the phone, and I realized that this is the first time I talked to a live person from Reddit since 2014, when we used to do the Secret Santas, right? And you would get matched with another Redditor and send them the gift. And we talked for like an hour and a half. I said, "Oh my God, there's real people in Reddit. What did I do? You're not an AI at all." They still exist. But you're right. Like, we're looking for community. We're looking for people. And it's hard to go through it's hard to fight the noise. Like, how do I show up in the world of nonsense that gets out there that still gets traction? And then, how are you going to have the community? So I see a shift of moving more towards in-person. I'm not going to say return to office. It's not about return to office. It's about going to meetups afterwards, or even virtual meetups. People are reaching out and trying to get to this place of human connection. Sometimes they're reaching out to AI for the human connection, which is its own thing.
Yes, that's a whole other conversation.
That synthetic customer conversation again.
It's easy to talk to.
Yeah. And it's very intelligent, because it always thinks my ideas are brilliant as we're going through.
I have mine in cynical and sarcastic mode. It works great. Mm-hmm. It makes me laugh every so often. Every so often it comes out with something that actually makes me laugh.
Yeah, Peter, you were going to ask something.
I just wanted to throw something in as we're going through. I know we're probably getting close to our time here, but development teams and agile development teams, that classic 6 to 8 people on a team, cross-functional and so on. You've worked at the classic 2 pizza team company that everybody talks about. And I'm just wondering what you're seeing, less about is the 2 pizza team a real thing, more about how are those kind of dedicated development teams changing as you feed AI support into that, or AI augmentation into it? Are they they're becoming smaller? Is it becoming individuals supported by agents? What do you see as the natural evolution of the classic agile 2 pizza team?
This is a great question. It goes back to what is the barrier to speed for the 2 pizza cross-functional team, right? Was the barrier the development speed, or was the barrier that, in theory, cross-functional teams makes sense? It's easy. Get somebody from marketing and UI UX and product and a developer and a backend and subject matter expert, put them in a room. Sounds easy, but then did you give them the agency to make the decision? Do they have autonomy? Do they have the resources? Those are the things that held them back. What I worry is going to happen, and everything is so new, so I can't say broadly this is what's happening to cross-functional teams. But what I worry is going to happen is we're going to see a collapse of the size from 2 pizza to 1 pizza, and still the barrier for decision making and direction and getting feedback. So you're just going to have less people who could theoretically do more, who are measured to do more, with an organizational structure that prevents them from moving forward. Like that, this is my biggest fear. And I think this is what a lot of people are feeling when they're like, oh, I'm being pressured to do so much more, but I'm not accomplishing as much, because we're just throwing stuff into the ether. And it's like, okay, well, what does this even mean now? Again, this is a broad statement. There are companies, organizations, teams that are doing it really well, and they're embracing it. You're going to find the mix.
I think you're right that it's back to that system piece again. It's what system does that team exist within, and it's quite often it's on both sides of the equation. It's on the input side, like is the definition of the work sufficient, and on the output side, do we have the ability to do this? If I need to interface with all these different enterprise systems, am I able to actually operate? Even if I've got all these agents and create code, I've still got to wait a half an hour to push something to have it containerized and pushed out to a Kubernetes farm somewhere, and that takes time. But I can develop faster than that, but I still got to wait. And so
Yeah.
and
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then you get to this principle, like, when you think about a cross-functional team, these are individuals who have to have ownership of the work that they pick up and are accountable to getting that piece of work done. This is where I see Agile kind of break down a little bit, because the individuals will treat it as their Kanban as the task board. Oh, let me get this. Oh, it's blocked. Let me pick another thing. And that's blocked, or it's done. And let me go, because that's what they're measured by. But the reality is, when you pick up a ticket, you are taking ownership of that ticket to get it to completion, right? So this is already a bad behavior that happens of, I need to get my Kubernetes cluster, and IT says it's going to be a week, and they put it on the side and forget about it and never follow up. And it comes up on the stand up, and maybe the Scrum Master will follow up on it, but it takes forever, right? It's like, no, this is your thing. You call IT 3 times a day until you are unblocked. Like, you rally to get this unblocked. So now with the pressure to keep delivering, the speed you can keep delivering, and frankly, the good feeling of delivering. Like, come on, you ship a feature, you ship code, I feel great about it. I love it, right? I can will it to existence. But it's so easy also to not have ownership of that thing that you picked up before, because that was too hard. Let me do something that's simple and fast. So are we going to end up with more and more things taking even longer because the team or the individuals moved on because it's blocked, thinking somebody else is going to take care of it?
And it's a bit of a weird one there, because the chasing things down creates noise. So that brings us back into the whole system of how do you align activities so that people aren't bugged by these reminders coming in, because they actually recognize that when a request comes in, we act on it, it changes. And it's a mindset that has to go across the entire organization rather than just in the one, the delivery team's squeaky wheel.
Yeah, I had an engagement we had a big team. We're working on back-end integrations for hotel management systems, and we were stuck waiting. Our client had to reach out to a major database provider to have them basically change the stored procedure. Like, that's all it was. And I had to go through approvals, and the details don't matter. What matters is they took the ticket, said it was blocked, moved on. And then for weeks it was blocked. And then when it came time to actually do it, it came up, oh, we don't have this. So we changed the approach and said, look, you are only ever allowed to have 3 assigned things to you. And that includes in progress and blocked. If you are blocked, you will call them every day. Finally, I got a call from the client saying, hey, this person on your team keeps calling. We are not ready to do this. And I said, you got to escalate it to your leadership, because they're counting on us to deliver. So what do you want to do about it? Because he is not going to stop calling you until you unblock it. A couple of days later, we got it unblocked. Like, it's uncomfortable, and it does create noise.
Yeah.
Right. My developer literally said, do you want me sitting here doing nothing because I'm blocked? And I said, yep. We're going to let the client know that they're paying for that because they are not unblocking us. Yeah. Look, guys, I'm not giving that as advice. Don't everybody do that. But the mentality of ownership is what I'm trying to get to.
For sure. Let's use this as a great point to try and bring together, talking about, the 3 items that we have on our list. Well, those 3 items now is what were the takeaways from today? So maybe I'll start with you, AJ. What's the takeaways? One takeaway.
One takeaway, I'm just going to lean on the ownership side. Own the problem, right? From the customer down, own it.
Peter.
I think I'll go with the. I liked your broken model piece. That if we see the outcome that we're looking at, and whichever direction that the result goes in, are we actually taking a step back to say, is the model that we used for our expectation broken? Like, have we even thought about that side of it? That leaves you.
I'm going to go straight to the beginning of the conversation. And AJ, when you were talking about the first thing that we do when we go talk to whoever it might be who has a problem and they feel very confident we can provide this sort of technical solution, whatever that might be. But the first conversation is, let's ask 5 whys. What's going on? How does the business work? Where is the real problem? That sort of exploration, a good reminder for us.
And some why
I love
questions
that.
too.
Okay.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, AJ, thank you very much for the conversation. Peter, as always, it's a pleasure to have a chat. And any comments or feedback, feel free to drop a note in the comments on whatever platform you're listening to this or viewing this, or drop us an email at feedback@definitelymaybeagile.com.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Like and subscribe.
Yeah.
I always
Like and
forget to
subscribe.
say that.
Yes, thanks for reminding us. Yeah, like and subscribe.
I always forget that. And my producer goes, dude, nobody's going to subscribe to you if you don't ask them to.
Yeah. Subscribe.
Oops. Please. Thank you so much for having me. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
AJ.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Definitely Maybe Agile, the podcast where your hosts, Peter Maddison and David Sharrock, focus on the art and science of digital, agile, and DevOps at scale.